So, if you've spent any time around either Christians or in a Christian church, you've heard someone quote Matthew, who gave Jesus the words, "The poor are or will always be with us." Often the words are uttered over tented hands and accompanied by serious, sanctimonious looks. If that's the way you've always heard them, then that's the way you expect to hear them. The words are in red in Bibles, which means for sure, Jesus said them. We don't have a book like that. That would be so nice. Truth. Yeah, I won't make that joke. In all my years, as both a Christian and now as a post-Christian, it never occurred to me to question this acceptance of poverty and the poor. It never occurred to me to ask why. Not only why are there poor people, but why should they always exist? Why would we want that to be true? Why would we accept that? Pope Francis alert. I'm quoting him a lot today. But he calls this a culture of waste. We throw away products and we throw away people. Too often, we prioritize products over people. I heard a speaker on NPR who said that we now find 25% of our population disposable. We're completely out of relationship with them. Before, poor people and rich people were in relationship. It was a service relationship, to be sure, but there was relationship. That's gone. Nobody's doing our gardening, or at least not in PA. Nobody's taking care of our deer and making sure that nobody hunts for them on our land. And no one is cutting our wood. Even those of us who don't actively think that is right, aren't actively working against it. The poor are people with all the same rights to life that we have. In a recent TED Talk, the Pope, so how much do you like that sentence so far? Really, I think I could stop there. There he was in his little white outfit, sitting at his little papal desk on his little papal chair and poking at people through the screen. It was phenomenal, right? But in any way, the Pope said that the love revolution will be won by those who see the other as the familiar, you. If we can make that little switch, will we tolerate the existence of poverty? Or will we get to work defeating it? And in this country, we've never used a familiar to. So we don't know what that means. We don't know what it means when you make a decision that, I now know you well enough not to, as the French would say, vouvoie them. And I knew people when I was living in France who had worked together for 45 years, sat next to one another at a desk, and they vouvoied. So that movement into the intimate is really something that we could consider, because it's not really part of us. But, so if we make that switch, will we tolerate the existence of poverty, or will we figure out what we can do to defeat it? When I started asking that question, I did what Anns do, and I started reading. Books on race, books on poverty, books on middle class, articles, podcasts, old things, new things, fill her up. And not too far into this process, I came to this great conclusion, and pretty much everything you and I believe, however disparate that is, about poverty is wrong. It seems that neither social programs nor the teach a man to fish model are the answers, particularly in and of themselves. It seems perhaps far more complicated and perhaps even far more simple than those of us on this spectrum have figured out. Lately, at least, the so-called experts have considered asking the poor and the oppressed about their lives. Interestingly, despite all the things we're told about them, they know a fair amount about why they're poor. Social programs are often established to maintain people in poverty. They lift people a little, but not enough. At the racism workshop I went to several years ago, someone talked about how welfare has become the new employers in places where industry has died. Over the hill in coal country, there are no jobs to leave welfare for, or jobs that would make you more than have a stronger floor to stand on. Those jobs are gone. So in these instances, welfare cannot be something that tides people over during illness or education or a major loss, as welfare was meant to do and as it mostly does. So I think we have to ask ourselves the question of how do we, as a nation, benefit from having people permanently unemployed? Because if we didn't benefit, that would not happen. The old maxim in organizational development is that need drives change. If it's working for us, we're not going to fix it. Which is a word to us to figure out how do we express needs so that people can feel it, as opposed to giving people more facts. Without jobs, the Teach a Person to Fish project doesn't work very well. You can buy people expensive fishing rods, but if you only allow them to fish in polluted ponds with either no fish or toxic ones, we are not helping. Look at the rates of asthma in poor neighborhoods. We dump our waste there. We're killing people we say we're helping. I recently had a very unpleasant conversation on the street with a woman about childhood hunger, which she is certain is not a thing. She has seen starving children, she told me, was certain that I had not, which I have, and may God or someone help us. Many of our children are obese and therefore not hungry, she opined. This rail-thin woman insists that poor people need to learn to eat frozen vegetables which are cheap, and they would never be hungry again or obese. They need cooking classes, not food. Thank God for Sam Geiss, I was able to say. There are cooking classes being taught at our church, but I don't believe that 5 pounds of carrots on a weekend to hand to a small child is the answer. Small orange children. That's not where we're going. Not very helpful. They'd see well, though. They might even see through this. We are a church. We are not a social service agency. We keep remembering this, Scott keeps reminding me when I'm like, we could. The best thing we can do is feed hungry children. When she insisted there were none, I posited that I have both fairly convincing statistics and fairly convincing stories from teachers. I kept exhaling. I was wearing my collar. It's uncomfortable. It was cutting into me. It helped me remember it was there. That was a good thing. I try to avoid loud screaming matches anyway, but I was so cognizant of this stupid, uncomfortable collar, realizing that I needed to myself to look calm and present. Although when I talked to Kate later, she said, well, imagine what kind of groups we'd have gotten to the church if we'd had the headline in the national papers about you minister, pop somebody on the street. It's not the image I want. It is not. But the fact is, if I'm to be the one to whom people come and feel secure, which is why my reason for wearing that collar, I have to make a place for her as well. La, 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 I can't hear you, is not an acceptable response to what I feel is her wrong-heartedness. Eventually we split and sort of stomped off. And of course we ran into each other immediately after. I still had my collar on. So, and she was gracious enough to say, I didn't mean to start a fight, and I know we agree on the basic things, which is lovely and probably not true. And I, infinitely shallow, thank you, Betty and Sam, could be pleasant back, which is what she needed. I can't afford to get frustrated because bottom line, I have kids to feed. So do you. The Pope was fabulous at using the familiar you in this talk. You are the person, and you, and you, and you. All said with loving intimacy, right through that screen. This woman and I illustrate the exact divide across which we need to build the bridge, because we want her money, as well as our own, to feed those children. The children need it. Hunger doesn't care what you think. And yes, street lady, despite our privileged assumption, obese children are malnourished, often, or can be. And yes, Anne, you can find another way to reach her. I really need to talk to April. We really need to do this group about those books I've spoken about. But that encounter aside, this week I spent some wonderful time listening to long podcasts from Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor and and also former President Barack Obama. Oh, they were lovely and helpful. And in particular, Sonia Sotomayor addressed the notion of pulling oneself up by one's bootstraps. There's a continuing tension in America between the image of the person who pulls themselves up by the bootstraps and the person who believes that you need a lift to get up sometimes, Sotomayor told the program's executive director. Those people who believe that everyone must pull themselves up, they don't believe people are entitled to help. For those of us who understand that sometimes, no matter how tall the heel on your boot is, the barrier is so high that sometimes you need a small lift to help you over it. They understand that the inequalities in society that build that barrier so high were built to prevent people from walking over that barrier. So unless you do something, you and you and you and you, they will never have a chance. She continues, I had those things. I had a unique mother who was able to understand the benefits of education and encouraged me to use education as my liftoff. But not everyone knows that. And Taylor said to me the other day that Al Franklin simply says, not everyone has boots, let alone bootstraps. We have to find other ways. Not just one other way, but other ways. I'm glad Maria and Gilberto are not here today. I asked them if I could talk about what we're learning about helping with them, and they said, please. I hope that what we've done will enable them to change their lives, and changing their lives is their job. But I hope it will also change ours, which is our job. When they came up last year as migrants, they never made enough money, even with the extra jobs, to get ahead. They got the kids outfitted for school and then went home with very little, and then no work in sight. In this country that values manual labor but can't live without it, Justice Sotomayor reminds us that manual labor is hard and requires many hours and so much of people's strength. But we don't pay people enough to make their lives easier, too. Undervaluing both the people and the work often means that we lose all that talent that might have come into the pool. We don't develop the people's talents. We don't let them change the way work is done. My nephew Elijah runs an excavating company and has had a hard time finding workers. Gilberto did a little work for him last summer. Because of this, Elijah was willing to take the risk of not only hiring him, but also helping them get here. Many of you and many in the outside community helped them with household necessities. Only one paycheck in, and they're beginning to stabilize. Maria is cleaning houses, some of them yours. Ours. Elijah and Gilberto enjoy working together, which my nephew now says, hi, Ann, what's up? As opposed to, what do you want? 2 weeks of that. I'm all about this. But because I had made that public post on Facebook, Nina called me when a parishioner of hers was suddenly widowed. This happened on Friday. The family would be coming, and the wife simply couldn't cope with the household work. So on Friday night, they went up and they cleaned her rugs for her. And it's interesting. This is a sideline in an already complicated sermon, I know, but in 2 weeks we're going to do a service, and we're not clear what we're calling it, but that has been asked. The Black-led ministry, Black-led congregations have asked that we do a service on white supremacy and just thinking about race and racism and how we work that, but. here were Maria and Gilberto cleaning the house, and in a moment of great need. I mean, it really changed Randy's life. She was really very grateful. And sitting drunk at a counter was a guy busting on Gilberto about, well, where do you come from and how did you get into this country? He was born here. He's American. Like, what kind of welfare are you on? What are you doing? What are you this? What are you that? And I really think, while we get a lot of the really big issues, I think a lot of us do, it's that stuff. We don't know how to break that up. And that is our job. How do we interfere? How do we, one, make them feel comfortable enough that they're here? And, Maria goes like, oh my God, he was so rude. But how do we work to make sure that no one deals with that? And it's hard. It's hard. I don't know about you, but I get like sort of rocked back on my feet. And again, I'm ready to go, what the heck are you saying? Who are you? He's lost a nephew. That still doesn't give him the right to do that. So that's work we have to do. And I'm grateful for the program you're working on and the program all of you are a lot of people are working on to make this different. But Rosie is throwing the discus on the track team. And she's been talking about going back for her first year. She came up talking about that. And one weekend, her friends were always saying, why would you do that? Why aren't you staying here and throwing on throwing the discus? Alfredo loves his teacher. Jordi took Gilberto and Alfredo to play soccer last week, and the story I heard is that Gilberto scored the winning goal in the last few minutes. So, what they need from us is friendship, a friendship that accepts who they are and where they came from, and has an awareness of that. A friendship that understands those things, that helps when it can, and learns what it can. This work is transforming my idea of helping. We are a relatively tiny church, growing. It's great to see it full. But we can only do so much. There are limits to the charity we can offer. I've thought about that word lately, exploring, I think, what it means to be in charity with one another, which is an old-fashioned phrase. We don't talk about that. But to be kind, to be benevolent toward one another, to be kindly disposed, to have the room to love one another. That's what we're here for. And we have to have the knowledge to love one another, too, because we have all these preconceived ideas about stuff. Not too long ago, a church about an hour and a half from here, with whom I've had small exchanges about an after-school snack program, noticed I was half-time and wondered if I'd be interested in exploring working with them. At first, I was flattered and excited by the challenge, and I thought, okay, and maybe the money. But I thought about their need, and that's always a draw. And then I talked to a couple of you who reminded me, one, that I keep fairly busy right here, and I would have to give things up. But what really helped me to respond with no regrets was being reminded of the word or the phrase of being in charity. I cannot be in charity with another whole group and its surrounding community. There's not enough love in me to help them explore and pursue their dreams with the same vigor I'm dedicated to ours. All communities deserve that much love. Human love, while expansive, is not limitless, whatever I say. That's why we lean on one another. Here we are. How do we help? Our community has the same limitations. We cannot erase poverty, although we can raise the issue. We can be vocal about being unwilling to accept a system that embraces and utilizes poverty. I don't know how many of you have read stuff about reparations. There's a lot being said about it these days. And if you're like me, every time you see the word, you squinch away from talking about it. It's hard. What does it mean? And I would rather hide than look at what it might possibly mean. But if you keep reading, I finally realized that by helping Maria and Gilberto find a job and find an apartment, by helping them navigate the school system and the banking system, and yesterday he had we went on healthcare.gov, and we got him healthcare for the first time in his life. And what was amazing was not just that I helped him navigate the healthcare system, but the fact that, he wanted to have health care. I've been yelling about it. Elijah really needs it to know that his business is safe. But once he had it, he said, I can go to the doctor. If I have something wrong, I can go to the doctor. I've never as an adult been able to see that. And you think about the privilege that so many of us have to, like, oh my gosh, I'm sick, I'm calling the doctor. He's never had that. There's never been money. So we're helping them raise their floor high enough. It's their work that will change their lives. But we have knowledge gathered through years of privilege that can help them and can help us help others. And more than anything, we can befriend them. There's always stuff we can do. I remember a story about a tenured Bucknell professor who left because a bank here denied his family a mortgage. And I wonder, and he was a person of color, did the white professors with mortgages in that bank rise up and go en masse to the bank to visit them and say, yes, see our mortgages? There's a bank down the street that will take us. Not only did we confront the bank, but did we give that person that sense of solidarity? And we don't know that in some ways it's just that simple. And I think that's the thing that we talk about together as we talk about that. It's that simple. We just go like, okay, here we are. All right, we're here. And we go. But that is reparations. That sacrifice of that, point higher on our mortgage if we have to move next door and they're not as accepting, but they're accepting of the person that needs to be here. Who knows what you lose in a college where that happens? And I'm sure Bucknell's not the only college that's happened at. It happens all the time. An organization our size can help one family without an awful lot of effort in the way we have, especially with the help of our larger community. We're not always going to be successful. We may not always make a good bet. But each success moves us forward. Each failure offers us information about what and where and how we failed. And, there is no sin in failure. The only sin is in not trying. We can help other folks be a part of making a difference because that, more than anything, is what people want. The gratitude I received for inviting people to help, for putting out a Facebook post, and people are lugging up mattresses and money and kitchen stuff and going, thank you for letting me be a part of this. And I'm like, put it in the truck, off we go, carry the box. They were so grateful, and it's not something I think of because it seems sort of straightforward. Here are people that need things. Here's a way to help. Let's help. But most people don't say that to people. Most people don't offer that invitation. And that's part of what we need to be doing here, is offering that invitation. We can help people be part of something bigger, something kinder. We can keep inviting. I think we have to attribute most of our success, and we have no small share of that, to a little skill and a lot of dumb blind luck. We were in the right place in the right time to encounter issues we could impact. Lenore had a conversation with a former colleague about the backpack program, and baby, just look at us now. We got a new check today for $1,100. Lori from the CSIU came to the yard sale one year, and now we work to get the migrants set up. Gilberto and Maria were among the first migrants here, and they liked us, and we liked them, and they can't wait to help with this year's migrants. They have towels ready for the next group that's coming. Everything we've done in the act of being charitable has been predicated on our taking a chance on sharing our resources and talents and living out our 7 principles. Pope Francis said, that wonderful man says, to fix problems, we need memory, we need courage, and we need creativity. Love requires a creative, ingenious, and concrete attitude. He was thus dropping quotes. He challenges us to see the other as neighbor. He challenges each of us to make the first effort. He was so convincing. He reminds us that the future is in the hands of those who recognize the other as two, That future's name, he says, is hope. Not a silly, naive hope, nor one locked into only what we already know, but one that believes in possibility, even those possibilities beyond our present imagining. He says just one tiny little light breaks the darkness. A single individual is enough for hope to exist, and that individual can be you or me. And then another you, and then another you. Does hope begin with an us? No, it began with you. But then there's an us, there's a revolution. And even the revolution, it began with you. He goes on to insist that this revolution be one of tenderness. We must take care of the other and to take care of our silent and suffering earth. To be tender is to listen and to see. Tenderness is not weak. It requires fortitude and strength. It allows for failure and demands continuing. Again, Francis, the more powerful we are, the more ability we have to impact people, the larger responsibility we have to act humbly. Power is like drinking gin on an empty stomach. If, however, you make love concrete, power becomes a service and a force for good. I've never heard a Christian theologian say this. Jesus is God descended to be at our level, not to save us, not to die for us, but to live with us, to see us, to teach us to see one another. We're challenged to be those who see, who offer our hands, and sometimes with something in them that makes the journey more palatable, sometimes to give someone a boost when the step is too high and we're already comfortably aloft, and sometimes just to offer the simple presence. Poverty is many things for many reasons, but I believe the most important to acknowledge is that it exists and that we don't have to like that or embrace it. We can simply do what we can to make it different. We can take care. We can't eliminate child hunger, but we can help and invite others to help. We cannot eliminate poverty, but we can help one family and then another. We can support our Charity of the Quarter projects and understand what a huge difference they make and we make by helping. We have a lot to learn. There's no question. But if we keep learning and keep our hands and hearts open, if we stay connected and look for some feedback, we're going to keep growing. Sarah asked us to do a circle of unity because this is a new beginning for us, and because Sarah loves to do some stuff with the wider church. Wait, I have to get my... Sarah knows I can only absorb so much here, but it's a beginning of knowing that sometimes creating space is as simple as holding your neighbor's hand, or knowing that the person standing beside you is your neighbor, your familiar, your intimate. We're not yet good at everything we need to be good at, but we're working at it. Forgive ourselves. How's that thing go? We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. That should be our prayer every day. Get up in the morning and forgive ourselves for what's going to happen today, what happened yesterday, and the people. We're going to keep helping however we can in ways that make sense to us and the people who need our help. As June Jordan says, we are the ones we've been waiting for, all of us. We're here. Let's not wait any longer.